welcome. My name is Kelly Anderson, and this is Fanimated, the animation fan podcast where we get a chance to geek out about our favorite animated media. Today, Emma Martin and I are diving into the 2012 Dreamworks film Rise of the Guardians. This story about Jack Frost and his legendary friends really hits home for us right now, so if you need a bit of hope, joy, and fun, you're in the right place. You may have noticed that this episode is coming to you a week early. Some of you Fanimators voted for us to release this episode early on our Instagram, and we are happy to oblige. Make sure to follow us at Fanimated Podcast if you haven't already. We've been having a lot of fun over on Instagram lately, and we'd love for you to join us. So let's get right to it. Spoiler warning for those who haven't seen the film, and let's get started and let's get animated. I can hear you.
Yay! I can hear you.
Awesome. Awesome. We're figuring it out. We're like old people. How do we make technology to work? I always figure there's going to be technological troubles, especially since we haven't done this before. You said we have done long distance before. I don't think we have.
Yeah. It was a silent voice because I remember I was in Bailey Hanson's room and I was holding my phone and had my headphones up and we were recording.
Do we have an episode on the silent voice?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, yes. I talked about the theme. Like, what? That's like my favorite one.
I guess we've done so many by now. I've totally forgotten what we've done. And now
it was a long time ago.
It's a long time ago.
It's like the beginning. I think it was like the second episode I did. So, because the first one was Oron Academy.
We did Oron. I don't have we did Over the Garden Wall. Oh my gosh, it's way up here in August 13, 2019. That wasn't even that long ago. Oh my gosh. Guys, I am literally flabbergasted that we did a silent voice.
You should listen to it. It's great. It's a good episode. Because I remember after that episode, Jamie came into the coffee shop and Jamie was just like, Emma, that episode was like so moving. Like gosh. Didn't realize how impactful that film actually was. And I was like, yeah, like, because talking about the themes and things like that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, like literally just the other day I was thinking about that movie and I was like, man, we should do an episode on that. So we've already done one. Oh yep. No, I'm losing my mind. Good. I'm glad we didn't. I'm going to have to go back and re-listen to some of the old ones. Oh, man.
Oh, my gosh. Oops, sorry.
It's all right. You know what? We're just in a time and place where I'm losing my mind.
Amen, sister.
So, are you ready to talk about Rise of the Guardians?
Oh, if I cry during this podcast, I am sorry.
I hear you.
I'm ready.
I think right now is the perfect time to be talking about this film because there's so much fear and darkness in the world and we just need some hope. So we're here today to talk about Rise of the Guardians, Dreamworks 2012 computer animated feature.
Yes, so good. I love this film.
So absolutely beautiful, fantastic. I just can't even. Well, let's start with, did you see this in theaters? Or when did you first see it?
I did not see it in theaters. I had seen previews and thought it was really interesting because it's obviously not traditional as far as how characters are portrayed, as in like the main characters of Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy. So it
Mhm.
looked a little bizarre, almost like seeing a preview for a Tim Burton movie, but not as creepy.
Yeah.
So um, my brother had bought the DVD, and one day I just decided to sit in and watch the movie with him.
Mhm.
And I'm pretty sure by the end of it, I was just, crying my eyes out. And so then it just became one of my favorite movies. And and you know what? I actually remember, I think actually one of the first times I saw it was actually in college. I remember being in my dorm and watching it too. So I don't know which one came first, but I just remember like being so in awe of that movie, and just,
Mhm.
it really like inspired me and gave me courage and hope, and I just fell in love with that movie.
Oh, that's brilliant and wonderful. I personally don't remember because my memory is generally pretty bad. So I don't remember if I saw it in theaters. I have a feeling that maybe I didn't because I don't remember it. Regardless of me not being able to remember when I actually first saw this movie, um, I had the same feelings that you described. Just like, oh, it's just so uplifting and so powerful. And the characters, I mean, taking these well-known characters and making them different and new and fun and engaging are super. It's just, they did such a great job. And Jack's
Mm-hmm.
overall arc and development is absolutely fantastic. And I think it's
Oh,
one
yes.
that so many people can relate to. So let's go through the basic synopsis.
Sounds like
So
a plan.
yes, the film opens, and let me just say that this is my favorite, one of my favorite opening scenes ever, and I could probably just talk about the opening scene for like an hour. But Jack rises out of a pond and is like, I'm, Jack Frost. I know, and whatever. And he's like discovering himself. And so the man in the moon, put him there, and he, discovers he has ice powers and all that stuff. And he, is overjoyed by that because how cool. And then the wind like makes him fly. And then he goes to the nearby like village, and this is all like happening a long time ago. And then but he realizes no one can see or hear him, and it's just like kind of heartbreaking. But it's about Jack Frost, and they fast forward like 300 years, and it's present day, and there are these guardians of the children, and those guardians are the Sandman, Santa Claus, the Tooth Fairy, and the Easter Bunny. And they all protect the children of the world and protect their hopes and their dreams. And the boogeyman, also known as Pitch Black, has come to kind of take over and bring fear and darkness back into the world. And so to combat that, the man in the moon tells the guardians that there's going to be a new guardian, and it's Jack Frost. And there's mixed feelings about that because the Easter Bunny doesn't like Jack, which I think is hilarious. I like their relationship a lot in the film. And so, yeah, so all of these well-known, legends come together and try to save the spirits and the hope of the children of the world. And there's one specific kid that kind of goes along with, you kind of see throughout the film, and that's Jamie. And he's kind of like the first one to believe in Jack and all those other things. So there's your basic plot setup.
Great job, Kelly.
Thank you. Try.
What I absolutely love about the Guardians themselves is that they are also unique and a lot different than we imagine them to be, considering we know the traditional tale of like Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny, etc. But I love the spin that these characters create. Like, it's just a whole different perspective of their character, and just like not how you expect them to be. Like, for example, Santa Claus is a lot more like rough and tough. And like, it's those characteristic qualities of each of them that really makes the whole story, the whole plot, just that much deeper in its relatability, seeing all these like unique characters come together, and but they're all coming for one ultimate purpose, even though they're all so very different from each other.
Yeah, they make a really solid team, and it's just fascinating how all of these characters, like, you might have preconceptions of them, but they truly, the DreamWorks team was really able to make all of these characters, like you said, like have individualities that like it just make them feel more real rather than the legend or the caricature of Santa Claus that you'd think of. Oh.
They give each character like even like their own personal fears and their strengths and weaknesses, which just makes it all the better.
Yeah, and the way Santa Claus talks to Jack about it, and what I really, really love is that like they all have a center or like something that they're protecting within children. And for Santa Claus, his center is wonder, and for the Easter Bunny, it's hope. And what Jack realizes throughout his journey is his is fun. And so they all embody those parts of themselves very distinctly. And then when they come together, it's like just super awesome.
Yeah, totally. Which interesting that you bring up the centers. I believe there's one part where like Pitch Black mentions that Sandman's center is like light, which would make sense for him. But I was curious as to what the Tooth Fairy center would be then, since we don't ever really talk about it.
I think hers is, something to do with memories, like, because
oh, sure.
Was a really fascinating part, I thought, was that the teeth that they collect and they keep like hold the most important memories of childhood, and then they can use that, and they use it at the end to kind of help the children remember good things, and that helps them like bring the kids back into hope. And so yes, that's what I think the Tooth Fairy's center is. And it is interesting, like watching through the movie, and you can really see, and you can even hear Jack or someone else talking about or using the word fun, or like seeing instances where Jack is having fun or bringing fun. And it seems so obvious, after you have watched it once, you're like, oh, of course that's his center.
Right.
But this really is just, what touches so deeply with me about this film is just, it's truly a story of trying to find your purpose. And like, isn't that what we all are like struggling to do and striving for and searching for? And that's Jack's whole story in this film. He is just, brought into this world by Man in the Moon, and he doesn't know why, and he's frustrated that no one will ever be able to see him or believe in him, and that he'll never know why he was brought there. And so that's his whole journey, and it's so fascinating and wonderful. And honestly, this film, I think it really does have really strong, I think, like biblical Christian themes.
Oh, totally.
Absolutely. And every time I watch it, that's what I think of. And again, it just thinking about this movie makes me so happy and just uplifted.
Yeah, I absolutely love Jack's storyline because it is so, like, even though he is a guardian and his purpose is like eternal because now he's like immortal, like he's still so relatable because he's getting to know himself again. Like, he had a life, but then he wakes up and doesn't remember anything. So he's going through the same thing as a lot of us do in life, and just trying to figure out what is his purpose, why is he here, just those questions we ask ourselves. And eventually he does find his purpose, and it's not always as concrete as we think it will be, but it's a piece that we hold on to. And it's interesting that you mentioned like the center of fun and how we like see that throughout the whole film. I mean, after the prologue scene with Jack, his first sentence that he says is, well, that was fun. Like, as he's like playing with the kids, like having the snowball fight and the sled ride. So, yeah, it's so evident, but, and that's like the same thing sometimes with our purpose, is like, it's right there in front of us, but we just have to have the eyes to see it.
Yes. And like Jack is already fulfilling his purpose before he understands it.
Yeah. Like he's already bringing fun to kids.
Exactly. Like he's already been doing it. It's just a part of his character, of himself. And so, you think about your own life, like you already have this, what you need to fulfill your purpose. You already have all of that inside of you. And so does Jack. Jack. I love Jack and his story. Oh my goodness.
Yes. One of my favorite lines that he says that like really just gets me is, he says, how can I know who I am when I don't know who I was? And he's like thinking about his past. Every time that one gets me.
Yes. And for Jack, yeah, he tries to get his teeth back so he can have his memories, because he doesn't realize that all of the guardians, and himself included, were people on Earth, before they were chosen to be guardians. And so he doesn't have any memories of that. And so he's trying to regain his memories because he thinks his past will help him see why he's there and for what purpose. And I feel like that, I think understanding history in general is important to understanding the present, but also like as far as like a purpose goes, like I feel like you can weigh yourself down, I think, with your past sometimes, like sometimes I feel like your past is something you need to move past.
Move past. Yeah, no, I get what you're saying.
Looking at it yeah, it doesn't quite fit. That idea doesn't quite fit with this story's telling, but.
Well, it's like a matter of how you see the past. Like Jack could look back on his memory of his sister and think over and over again, if I had only done this, or if I had only done that. But he doesn't think about that. He thinks about the fact that, yes, I died, but I saved my sister in the process. And I'm sure she hopefully had a wonderful life thereafter. And like, he has a new purpose that drives him forward. So like, it's not that the past is bad or good per se. It's just, I think it's more of how we look at it. And so how we look at it might cause it to weigh us down or lift us up towards the future.
Absolutely.
Getting real deep here.
We're getting so deep. We're just diving in, man. I love it. Another part I find interesting with Jack's like overall purpose journey is that when he is brought, to the other guardians, and they're like, you're becoming a guardian, and the man in the moon told us, and he he's basically being given a purpose, and he rejects it at first. And I feel like that is also just like, well, it's part of the hero's journey, so it's kind of like a storytelling necessity, but also it's just kind of like, I think we can do that too. It's like, even if we are given a purpose, we are like, well, that's not, good enough, or that's not, we can't fully understand what that means. And Jack doesn't either. He doesn't truly understand what being a guardian means and how he's suited for it and how he's kind of already been doing it.
When he sees the guardians, he thinks like responsibility and overbearing personalities. And
yeah,
I think he just wants to be free and have fun. One of my favorite like little commentary that he gives when he goes to Santa's workshop is like he's talking about how he's tried to break in so many times and Santa's just like laughing along, but then he like I don't remember his name, but he addresses one of the Yetis by his name. So it's very clear that like he's been here before.
Yes. And can we just say how I love that the Yetis are the ones doing all the work in the North Pole and all the elves are just kind of in the way.
Right. We let them believe that they're doing the work.
Yes. Oh, that's so funny. I love it. Again, just like lots of little clever things of how they imagined all of these characters and all of these locales too, like the North Pole and the Tooth's palace. Like everything's so imaginative and beautiful. And I mean, everything in this movie is visually stunning. But yeah, they're just very
so
clever.
Visually stunning.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Who is one of your favorite Guardians besides Jack, obviously?
Yeah, it would be Jack. It would be my first. But of the other Guardians, man, it's a hard choice between Santa and the Easter Bunny because I just love Santa Claus. Like, I love his aesthetic of just like this big burly tattooed gruff guy who's actually just really sweet and like trying to be a mentor to Jack. But I absolutely love Hugh Jackman, and he voices the Easter Bunny, and him and Jack are just at odds all the time, and it's hilarious. So I'm gonna go with the Easter Bunny. Yeah. What about you?
Their dynamics are great. Oh my gosh, yes. I actually think that my favorite Guardian besides Jack would be Sandman, because
Really?
He's just so pleasant and like very expressive without his words, which I think is really an amazing element to incorporate into the story.
Mm-hmm.
Because yeah, you don't need your voice to say what you feel, and it's just really cool to see him in action, and like you can tell like when he's joking by like a smirk on his face or something instead of, you know, a vocal laugh. But also he's just so visually stunning as well. Like I just love the golden sand that creates the dreams. Like, oh my gosh, it is just my favorite.
And that, you know, going a little ahead of ourselves here, like animation wise, is one of the kind of big animation feats of this film are the sand particles of the Sandman and that Pitch uses. Just like the way they like, you know, put together a new program to be able to use that special effect in that way. And it looks stunning and absolutely fantastic. It just, I mean, not only when it's like formed into these really cool, different imaginative, like creatures and things, but also when it's just swirling around. And like, I love it when like Jack's ice like hits Pitch's sand and it's just like, whew, it just is so cool. So cool.
So beautiful.
Speaking of characters, let's talk about the best character in the whole film, Pitch Black.
I was like, wait a minute, I thought we just already talked about Jack.
Okay, I love Jack, but I love Pitch equally. He is a great villain, and Jude Law is amazing.
Yeah, Pitch is probably one of the best villains I've ever experienced. Agreed. And yeah, oh my gosh, Jude, holy crap, his voice just is so enticing. Like I could listen to it all day. And like,
yes,
it's just, oh my gosh, he really knows how to just be so sly and manipulative and just really work his voice to like bring about that character, which just, oh my gosh, he is very talented.
So good. And just the way he's animated and like his dialogue is so clever and like he is the type of truly like demonic like evil of like manipulative and like and sly and like and I love the little piece of like he has to use Sandman's sand and he corrupts it. He, you know, just like he can't create anything new. He just corrupts what's already there. So it's like a really great visual representation of like, you know, corrupting thoughts or, you know, corrupting the goodness that's already in the world. And then of course at the end the kids are able to like make it go back to normal, which is so cool. Like we have the power to change it back, you know?
Right.
Anyway, yeah. And Pitch is able to like understand what Jack wants and manipulate him, and try to even coax him to his side. And he really is just like a truly terrifying villain because of how real that feels. And what I love is that first scene where he's actually like with the Guardians, like at the Tooth Palace. Like he is, I mean, he even says like later, like he knows everyone's greatest fears. That's the one thing he knows. And like he knows exactly how to like pick on all of the Guardians, and he just like says these little quips and things, and even though it's like mean, I'm also just like, this is hilarious in a kind of a weird way. But yeah, and the way he moves too, like he'll just like be in one place and then suddenly be in another, and like he's just all over and just like surrounding you know. It's crazy.
Right. He's a shadow, like he's moving like where we least expect it, and like glides around. And yeah, it's definitely like a devil figure in that he is constantly speaking false identity, especially into Jack.
Yeah.
Which is something, once again, that brings Jack's story arc so relatable to its audience, because how often do we have that voice in our head telling us that we're not good enough, or like we're not gonna make our dreams come true, kind of thing. And for me, I really love the moment when he is testing Jack in the snowy blizzardy area that they go to. I'm not even sure where it's at exactly, but they're just in this tundra, and he's talking to Jack about how, like, I understand what you're going through. Like, I'm not believed in either. Like, I get what it means to feel like you're so alone. And like, that causes Jack to like stop for a moment and be like, wow, you understand what I'm going through. But yet it's still, Pitch takes that and uses it for evil instead of turning it around to be something that could be so good. So yeah, he's oh my gosh, it's an incredible villain. And I think that's why like the movie is so impactful and it makes you cry at the end, because you're just like, yeah, this is something that we battle every day. And it's, at the end of the day, it's realizing I have the choice to decide to let that voice in or to ignore that voice. Like, I don't have to put up with it.
Yeah, because at the end, like all the kids have stopped believing because Pitch has taken over the Tooth Fairy's business, and taken over Easter, and everyone is sad about everything, and Jamie is the only one who believes, and so they go find Jamie, and then he helps his friends, and they all fight the darkness together. Like, they are able to face their fears, like literal fears, like visually in front of them, and they're able to turn it back into Sandman's pure and good thoughts. And I really love the line at the end that Jamie says, and I think you were gonna talk about this too, is Jamie faces Pitch and is like, I do believe in you, I'm just not afraid of you. And it's so powerful and so good.
Yep, that's the one that gets me every time, because once again, it's just that moment of like, wow, like I have a power inside of me to say no to like these fears and these thoughts, and they are very real. It's good to recognize that, but also to know, like, you don't have to be afraid. Oh my gosh, that scene is so powerful. And the fact that it's the children who are the ones who are able to overcome, it's their belief that allows the nightmares to turn back into dreams.
Absolutely. It's fantastic.
I also appreciate how, like, after they finish this great battle with Pitch, the children, Jamie specifically, comes up to Jack and just starts doubting and questioning, like,
Yeah.
what if I stop believing? Like, what if I don't, see you anymore, hear you anymore? And Jack, of course, reassures him that, we'll always be there for you, especially in here, as he points to Jamie's heart, which kind of makes you a guardian too. And
Yes.
like, it's just so good. Relating back to what you said, it is definitely filled with like a biblical theme, and that, like, that's in us, and we can, go out into the world and spread love.
Yeah, like we have that power too. And, just like he says, I was going to mention that too. Yeah, it's just like we are all the guardians, and we can all make the world a better place. Ah. Also, I really love. I know. So good. I also really love how at the end Pitch is overcome by his own fears. Like it's his own fears that like chase him away. And I always really like villain endings like that, because I think it's just so true that like it's the villain's own actions that cause their demise. Like that kind of idea has always been a good one. And so I enjoy that they did that. And that, Pitch says like, you can't ever get rid of me fully. Like I will come back. And, the Guardians are like, well, we'll be ready for you, like there's
Right.
no, I love that idea too, that like, he Pitch like comes back again and again, but the Guardians are always going to be there. They're always going to be fighting. And I just really love that idea too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so powerful. Can I talk a little bit more about some voice actor stuff?
Oh, yes, please, for sure.
So as far as voice actors go, I was a little startled when I first watched this movie, because Chris Pine was not the voice I was expecting to come out of Jack.
Right.
Jack is very slim and small and young, and not that Chris Pine isn't any of those, but he's just like definitely got a very deep, suave voice.
Mm-hmm.
And so just like hearing that in Jack's body, like kind of startled me at first. I was like, does this really fit? Like, I don't know. But over time, like I grew to love it. But it just always kind of, I thought it was funny that it kind of startled me that Chris Pine voiced him, but he does a great job.
Yeah.
And also with the Tooth Fairy, played by Isla Fisher. I love her so much, fellow redhead. And anyway, they had to like speed up her voice in quite a few sections of the dialogue to make her sound like she was like speaking more rapidly, because the Tooth Fairy's like, oh, there's one over there and there's one over there, like,
right, because she's like a little hummingbird. It's so cute.
Exactly. So she could like technically talk that fast, but for clarity's sake, they just had her speak, and then they would speed up her voice.
That's fascinating.
Kind of fun.
Yeah, that's super cool. And I know we already mentioned Hugh Jackman, but Hugh Jackman.
Oh my gosh. And his natural Australian accent, like, oh my gosh.
Yes.
Cronky. Like, seriously, because of his accent, like, it just makes Bunny. Like, Bunny is, like, basically, well, I mean, even Jack says that he calls him a kangaroo because, like, of the accent, and he's got a boomerang and all that.
Yeah.
But there's just, I love the dynamics between Jack and the Easter Bunny in particular, especially when they're joking around with each other. Like, because Easter Bunny will be all cool, and then suddenly Jack, like, tips the scale, and he, like, gets super fearful. Like, one example includes when they're, like, in Jamie's bedroom, and the greyhound has woken up, and Jack's like, do you know what greyhounds do? And the Easter Bunny's like, it's fine. And then, like, the alarm goes off, and the dog starts barking.
Jack makes the alarm clock go off.
Right. Yeah. And so then the bunny's like, cronky.
It's so funny. Yeah, they tease each other and make fun of each other, and it's so awesome. We love those dynamics. We love that Lance and Keith dynamic. We're there for
it. Yes, the love-hate relationship. It always gets us.
Little Voltron reference. We have way too many episodes on Voltron if you want to listen to those.
Which, speaking of a love-hate relationship, let me tell you about kind of a love relationship.
All right, Captain Emma, you're on deck.
Stop. That was a great pun. So here's the thing, folks. I know this isn't a love story in any way, except for it's the greatest love story in that it's, about taking down fear with joy and love. Besides that, there's no actual romance happening, but I beg to differ. So there's this character called the Tooth Fairy, and when she first meets Jack, she is just actually when the moon shows the visual of Jack, the little hologram thing, she's just fawning over it and just so fangirling at that moment. And then when she finally meets him, she is totally obsessed with him, mainly because of his teeth. I get that. She loves teeth, and his are white freshly fallen snow. However, when she starts to lose her powers, there's this moment where she comes off the sleigh and she falls down, and Jack helps her up, and she smooths her feathers and has a really giddy smile on her face. I'm just I knew it. she liked it. And then last but not least, at the very end, they have a magical hug, which says it all. But anyway, I just would like to take a moment to point that ship out because it's very adorable. However, in my just animated nerd ship personality, I do have a preference for another ship that's technically non-existent, but it's more in the fan base.
I know where you're going with this, and I approve.
And I actually love this ship way more than Tooth and Jack, which even though they are clearly very adorable. And that would be Jelsa, or Jack and Elsa.
Yeah.
Come on, folks. It's magical. They're both ice-powered people, and they complement each other so well because, they both deal with isolation and not being believed in. And then they're just, they would be great together. I'm just saying. And there's musical numbers out there for them too. But in the reality of Rise of the Guardians, Tooth and Jack are super cute. But if we're going beyond, Jelsa is where it's at.
Yes. Well, let's go beyond and go into all these crossovers because, personally, I think Jack and Elsa might be too similar of people, but they would at least understand each other's experiences deeply. So I see where that is going. And I do think they're cuter than Tooth and Jack. I've never been a fan of Tooth and Jack. On any level, actually. I don't know. I think it's partially because I just don't like Tooth very much. I don't know. I feel like in a film dominated by male characters, Tooth is very generic. She's just the generic girl, kind of character.
But at the same time, she's not super girly either. No. Which is kind of refreshing.
Yeah. But I don't know. I just don't feel like she and Jack have a lot going on. It's more like she's just fawning over him and not like they actually have any sort of connection.
Yeah, well, if you gotta spend eternity with someone, might as well,
Maybe. But I also wanted to take this opportunity to bring us all back to, the early 20-teens and back to the sensation that was and probably still is in some depths of the internet, the Big Four. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh my gosh, yes. Oh my gosh, here we go.
Okay. So
I had no idea we were going to be opening this Pandora box, but here we go.
I'm totally opening this Pandora box. This is Fanimated. It's what we do.
It's true. We geek.
We geek out. And this is I feel like, and because I have too much to talk about when I talk about How to Train Your Dragon, that I can't talk about it there. Actually, I feel like I might have mentioned the Big Four before, but the Big Four is these, oh man, how do I even describe it? Okay.
I mean,
on the internet, the big four were like basically Merida from Brave, Rapunzel from Tangled, Jack from Rise of the Guardians, and Hiccup from How to Train Your Dragon. So you got your 2 Disney girls and your 2 Dreamworks boys, and all of these movies came out like around the same time, like in beginning of the 2010s. And so for whatever reason, because the internet is the internet, these 4 were brought together as like in so many fanfics, in so many fan comics, in so much like fan art, like those 4 were put together because like they're all these 3D animated characters who are all teenagers and all like in these really great movies. And so it's just like, it was so prevalent, and I was never like too deep into it, but because I'm such a How to Train Your Dragon nerd, like it came up all the time. And so like, you know, people would put them in like different Hogwarts houses, and they'd be like, who would end up with who? And I'm like, back off, because Tangled is the best like animated like ship there is, so stop. But you know, it was all just like a lot of fun, and people like, you know, people would put a Hiccup and Merida together because they're like, you know, Scottish and stuff. It's just, yeah. So then, you know, they would put Jack and Rapunzel together, which would be definitely pretty chaotic. I'll say that.
yeah, I don't know. Like I don't even know where the big 4 started from exactly, but honestly, whenever I would see it pop up on my fan like feed, I would always get so upset because I'd be like, no, they don't go together. Like, I guess Hiccup and Merida kind of makes sense because they're like Viking-ish, but no. It's like whoever they have in the movie like is good for them. And like, yeah, Rapunzel and Jack doesn't even make sense to me unless he's like this magical being who like stopped by her window in the night or something like that. And that's great and all, but you know, you could have freed her like much sooner if you were in that story. So, but whatever.
Right. Yeah, I've never been a big fan of it, but it was just it's just such a big part of like that internet culture of the time that I couldn't not mention it. It was always really fascinating, and I still occasionally see some pretty good fan art of the 4 of them. I always really liked when people would put them in modern AUs, and I always thought that was pretty fun.
Yeah, it's really fun when like they do like the Hogwarts drawings. I always thought those were kind of cute.
Yes.
When they like are displaying them as a posse more than like romantic relationships, right. I'm like, yes.
Yeah, like they could all go on an adventure together, and I'd be down for that.
Right, exactly.
For sure. And that's what I love about, well, any fandom really, is that things like this can just sprout and happen and come out of nowhere, and like then, you know, people's imaginations run wild and they create so many awesome things. So, woo, go fandoms.
Go animation.
Animation.
Which, by the way, can we talk about the animation? Because it's gorgeous.
Yes. Okay, here we go. Because I've been saying in like every episode that talks about ice, how Rise of the Guardians has the best ice animation and Dreamworks wins. So you can go back and listen to a Frozen episode if you want to. I definitely talk about it in there. Because Frozen came out and I was uber disappointed because the ice looks like plastic. And I'm just a Dreamworks snob and was like, okay, but Rise of the Guardians came first, and look at that freaking ice animation, excuse me. So Rise of the Guardians, the ice, it just has so much more like character, and like it's a design. It's not just like you know, I don't know, Elsa's ice is so like fairy dust, ooh, you know?
Well, that's what I was going to say, is that like when I think of their ice and compare it, like to me, like Jack's snow and ice is very realistic, and Elsa's is more like magical. like in that
Right.
it's, it looks like it could be fairy dust, but instead it's got a snow-like quality to it. It looks like, uh, a snow cone, whereas Jack's snow looks like snow.
Yes.
you know? So I don't think it's necessarily bad. I still think it's beautiful, but I think that in Rise of the Guardians, it's a lot more impactful just because of how real it is.
Mhm.
And it's just beautiful to look at.
Absolutely. And that's a great way to describe it. It truly is two different stylistic choices and two different animation styles for two different stylistic purposes and, for different movies. And it's true because Jack is a magical being interacting with the normal world. And so his ice is not supposed to be I'm just going to use the term fairy dust because it's not supposed to be like that, because it's just like he's just breathing that into the world, um and going back to that first scene, like the animation in all of it is incredible. But just like all the little details, there's so many little details in this movie, and the
Mhm.
animation still holds up for the most part. Like there are definitely moments where I'm like, okay, yeah, it's just technology improves so quickly, but overall, like definitely still holds up. There's so many little details. Like when Jack rises out of the pond, his body like comes up like and breaks the ice apart. Even that, it's just so realistic, like the breaking of the ice in the pond. And then he steps onto that broken ice and it like reforms. And then, and like when he is discovering his ice power, like it just, like I said, it has this character to it. It swirls and expands and grows like it has a life of its own. And it's absolutely breathtaking. And there are so many tiny little particles like in the ice, and it just like it blooms like a flower. It's absolutely breathtaking, and I absolutely love it.
I think the scenes that I love the most in regards to Jack's ice is when he's by a window and he makes little designs. Like he'll just touch the window and then like an ice design will like form. Very similar to like an iced over window that you would see in our winters here in the Midwest. Like that was the pattern that always surprised me. Like even though he was like drawing a bunny or like he would like do a little image of Sandman in memoriam of him, like the little designs within the frosted ice, I just thought was so beautiful.
So good. Also at this point, always Dreamworks has really great lighting effects. You know me, I can't talk about a movie without talking about the lighting. But going back to my favorite scene, the first one, like it's just like the moonlight, the full moon and the moonlight on Jack and on this pond, and like just the atmosphere that portrays, and it's like it's so good. And then he goes into the village and it's like fires and all of these things. It's just like shadows everywhere, like all these different like sources of light, and in every place they go. And I just really love like Pitch's lair, and they're like, they're in there, it's all dark and dirty, and again, like you said, Pitch just moves in the shadows, so it's full of shadows and it's just like everything's gray. Oh man, the lighting in this movie is fantastic. And no wonder, because Dreamworks.
And there's also so much contrast because you have those moments where like the first scene where it's very dark because it's just the moonlight. And then you have, Pitch's lair, which is so creepy and great, but also very dark. But then you have the contrast of the Guardians and their like homes. So like the Tooth Palace is all shimmery and beautiful, and the Warren where the Easter Bunny lives is all green and lush and everything. So it's just crazy to see those contrasts throughout the story. It really is eye-catching. So like another favorite, like I love color. Like, you just like go into my bedroom and it's just color everywhere. It's just how I've always been. And I absolutely love the animation of the Tooth Fairy because of her feathers and how they like glimmer like bird feathers, but there's so many colors in their scales, and even in the little baby tooth character, like it's just so beautiful. Like I said, it's just very vivid.
Yes. And I just found the note I was looking for. So Roger Deakins is a cinematographer who worked on How to Train Your Dragon, of course, and then went to work on this film. And he advised on the lighting. So that's, you know, he was a big influence into the lighting and how it looks. And he also just like, for, like you said, color keys and so it says on Wikipedia, you know, my very intense research, that during production he gave notes on contrast, saturation, depth of field, and light intensity. So like Roger Deakins, I mean, did a fantastic job with How to Train Your Dragon. You can listen to all of my episodes on that. But again, in this one, like, yeah, the colors, the lighting, everything, fantastic. Just
you mentioned that the first scene is your favorite with the moon and Jack coming to realize who he is now.
Yeah.
My favorite scene is when we first see Sandman's powers in action, and it's just after Jack has had a day of fun, and he's walking like on the power lines and just hanging out. And I love seeing Jack's interaction with the golden sand, and like there's like these golden dolphins like swimming around him, and that would probably be my favorite animated scene. Yeah. I just love that so much because he was just in awe and wonder of all the things around him and having fun, you know, just playing with it in like a little golden sandbox.
I love that. That's a really beautiful scene too. What do you think of the theory that Jamie is a descendant of Jack's sister?
I would totally believe it visually wise. I mean, they look very similar, like that same like face structure and coloring. I don't know. I guess I've never heard that one before.
Really?
Yeah.
I am a firm believer because I just like that kind of thing.
Well, yeah, and it's kind of cool because it's like, you know, the person who allowed him to become a guardian, like saving his sister, like somehow like, you know, he's still connected to family, and that because he has a special liking for Jamie since he just hangs around that town a lot. So that's, if it was true, like that would be really awesome.
Right. So, and at the beginning, when he's like in Russia and picking on people and having fun, and then he tells the wind, he's like, which, by the way, I really love that the wind is kind of like a character. Like he talks to the wind like it's its own separate being, which is cool.
Yeah, like the moon.
Yeah, like the moon. And so he tells the wind, like, take me home. And so they go back to that town. And when Jamie is on that sledding adventure and they run into there's that statue in the middle of town. And it has like those same, like, you know, settlers type, you know, people. And so it's like clear that like, okay, this is the same village. This is the same town now, you know? And so that makes me think it's even more plausible that he's like a descendant. And again, like you said, like they look very visually similar. And I really like the idea of that he was still like kind of connected to his family, just like instinctually, even before he could remember that, you know, who he was or any of that. And so I always have really liked that theory. And I'm just gonna, you know, place that as my own headcanon and believe in that because I like it.
Yeah, I love that. It just makes Jamie and Jack's relationship so much like more intricate, you know? Like they already have like a fun relationship, but like the fact that they might be connected just makes it all the more better.
Yeah, and Jamie is the first one to see him and believe in Jack, which I love too.
Right. Yes, there's another connection.
Yes. Yay.
The only other animation note I was going to mention is I love how when Santa Claus has to get a hold of the other guardians, his signal like unleashes the northern lights.
Oh yeah.
It's just freaking gorgeous.
Yes.
So
I feel like this is true of every movie. If they have a chance to use the northern lights, they will. Especially if it has to do with Santa Claus.
Have you ever seen the northern lights?
I have not. Have you?
I have.
Really?
One time, like, so I'm originally from northern Wisconsin, and there was an evening I remember when the northern lights were showing like really close by, and it was beautiful. Like, it wasn't as like stunning as like the pictures you see. Like, it was just very faint, but it was really cool.
That is super cool. Man, I hope to one day see them. That would be awesome. Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about some other things with the production. The film is obviously based off of these books by William Joyce. And he was prompted to write them after his daughter, made a statement that was like, I wonder if the Easter Bunny has ever met Santa Claus. And so that, prompted him to make these books. And I have not read the books, although I've read synopsises and just like, so I understand at least some of the content. And basically, the books actually are more about how all of these guardians came to be. So it is much more about, like how did Santa Claus become Santa Claus, etc. And Joyce was actually a big part of the production of the film. And he was going to be a co-director, but then he moved to producer after his daughter passed away, unfortunately. And the film is dedicated to her, which is really sweet.
Yeah, I saw that at the end. I was like, oh.
Yeah. So Joyce really wanted the film to not be quite like the books, because he understood that, when people make books into movies, it just never happens the way people want it to, and people get disappointed. So the books are set in the much more distant past than the movie is. So the movie is in the future, in present time, and so that it kind of distanced itself from the books a little bit, which is what Joyce wanted. And he really wanted, like, he still was like a part of, the story and shaping everything. And he liked that parts of the film were dark and moody and poetic, and he was hoping that like that would set a different standard for family movies, and I think it's true, because like this film is very different than a lot of animated films in the West. It's more than just colorful characters and crazy adventures. Like, it is definitely very deep, like we've talked about already.
Definitely.
Also, Guillermo del Toro was an executive producer on this film. He obviously has a lot of connections with DreamWorks and has worked on multiple films. And like I've talked about, his Troll Hunters series, TV series, Tales of Arcadia series, definitely check out that episode. Talk about him a lot. He's awesome. He really connects with animation a lot, even though most of his films are not animated. He really, really loves animated features. And so he, of course, put his cinematic expertise into this film as well. And I think that is very evident. The only other thing I wanted to mention is that this film actually was a huge financial loss for DreamWorks, which is so sad. They lost $83 million on this film.
Oh, dear Lord.
Which is just so sad. And like, it grossed more than it took to make, but with like other production costs and marketing costs and everything, like it ended up being a really, like, one of the worst financial losses for DreamWorks. And it's so sad because it's such a fantastic film. So even though like, you know, it did fairly well in box office, like it still turned out to not be super great for DreamWorks, and it led to some, they had, you know, to some staff changes, and that's so sad.
That is really sad because oh my gosh, love this film. If you couldn't already tell, listeners,
Yeah.
it is just so deep and so moving, and maybe more adults needed to see it rather than kids. I don't know, but
Yeah.
it's just a phenomenal film. So it just makes me so sad that it did so poorly.
I know. And it wasn't even against like the other films in the box office at that point was like Breaking Dawn and Lincoln. Like there were no other like kid movies, I don't think. Oh, well, was Wreck-It Ralph around that time? I think it was. Yeah, well, Wreck-It Ralph came out in the early November 2012. This film came out later in November, but I don't know, maybe there was still like, who knows? Regardless, it lost money, and that's really too bad. On a happier note, I'm very glad it was made and that we can enjoy it. Like, that's what I love. And again, like, it's no secret that I love DreamWorks, and this is kind of why, because like they aren't afraid to try different things, and they always keep going regardless of their failures. You know what I mean? Because I mean, I will be the first to admit that DreamWorks has a lot more poorly made movies than some studios, or at least not necessarily poorly made. All these movies are made with lots of time and effort and talent and heart, but maybe not to my preference level. But but DreamWorks always continues to keep going, and they just get back up, and they aren't afraid to try new things, and they aren't afraid to be weird. Like they don't have to be like, I feel like Disney is kind of confined sometimes to like, they have to be Disney, and
right,
that's so much pressure. At DreamWorks, they can just do whatever. Obviously, they can't just do whatever, but I don't know. I just feel like their films have a lot more freedom of expression.
Oh yeah, I mean, like, take us back to Shrek, and then like, you know, that crazy story, and then Rise of the Guardians is so different from that atmosphere, and like then How to Train Your Dragon, also very different. Like, it's wild.
They're all so different. Like they're like, you can't really pin down like DreamWorks.
What DreamWorks is, yeah.
And like a lot of my favorite DreamWorks films are back in their 2D days, like Prince of Egypt and Road to El Dorado and Spirit.
Yes. Oh yes. Oh, such good films. Like, keep naming them, Kelly.
Those are all like some of my favorite films, and that's partially why, you know, that I love DreamWorks so much. But truly, like, you think about all of these different films coming from one studio, and it's like, yeah, it's just, you know, so many different ideas, and I love that.
Yeah, so diverse and different, which is what I like about it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Because especially in like a movie like Rise of the Guardians, obviously there's some pretty like significant themes going on,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not easy to put that into a film, because sometimes when you're talking about something so deep, it can come across as cheesy and cookie cutter. Like, this is how it all like ties together in a perfect bow. But Rise of the Guardians doesn't do that. Like, they show like the hard journey of what it means to look for purpose, and
Mm-hmm.
the challenges that you face along the way, and how even at the end there's hope. There's like, the bad guy will still keep coming, but there's the hope that, you know who you are, and so you can push through it. So like, I don't know, it's really, I applaud them for taking on the challenge of like talking about so many themes that are just very impactful.
Absolutely. So I'm very grateful that this film exists and that we can enjoy it. And Yeah. Everyone go watch it right now.
Right now.
Right now.
Actually, though, listeners, seriously.
Well, stick around for the final part of this episode, then go watch it.
Right. But in all honesty, like with our world right now and its circumstances, like this film is like the film for you. Like I would highly recommend watching it because it's easy to feel like lonely and hopeless during this time because it is crazy and it's hard being apart from people you love. And for an extrovert like myself, it's just hard to be apart from people in general. But like this movie is filled with so much goodness and hope, and it truly lifted my spirits. So I would just highly recommend going out and watching it. Not
Absolutely.
going out, but like watching it.
Right. Like you can rent it on so many places. You're good. Again, it's DreamWorks, not Disney. You can actually find what you're looking for.
True.
All right. I think we're ready for the part in the podcast where I ask you, Emma, what have you been watching recently?
Well, despite having more time on my hands, I haven't spent a lot of it watching shows yet. But I did finish Tangled, the series.
Okay.
I think the last time that I was on the podcast, we were like in the last season, I believe, maybe. Either way, I finished it. It was absolutely beautiful. May have watched the last episode a couple times. And and so that was really fun. And then obviously I watched My Hero Academia.
Yeah.
I did start watching The Demon Slayer. I haven't gotten much farther yet, but I absolutely love it. It's just so intriguing and kind of gives me a Full Metal Alchemist vibe with like the dynamics. It's so fun.
Yeah, like siblings going off on an adventure together to like regain their humanity.
Save each other. Yes, exactly. So I love that. Super dark, but like in a good way.
Right?
If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like you need to have some darkness to show the redemption,
Yeah.
So there's that. And then I've been introducing my roommate to Studio Ghibli films. So that's been fun because, I mean, I haven't seen them all either. But a couple days ago, we watched Howl's Moving Castle, which is one of my favorites. And she really loved it. She was like, I'm not sure exactly what was happening. And I was like, that's okay. It's a little complicated at first. So she's like, but I also want to watch it again. Can we watch it again? I was like, yes, girl. So we haven't watched it yet. I think we're going to watch it soon. But I just love that she got excited over it because it is so fun. I love that movie.
Yes, agreed. So good. I also just today actually started my rewatch of Tangled, the series, starting with the TV movie Tangled Before Ever After, which is beautiful and perfect. And because I'd love to do an episode on it, and we've talked about that before. But it really deserves an entire rewatch from me. Like I need to go back and rewatch the whole thing in its entirety now that it has finished airing. And then watching the first episode, I was like, oh, Varian.
I have been like listening to the soundtrack on repeat, like when I'm just hanging around the house, because oh my gosh, like I didn't realize it so much like on the journey, but like wow, the music is absolutely breathtaking. I just did like a video of me singing Waiting in the Wings on Facebook, which was really fun. But wow. Oh, thank you. These numbers are just so incredible. So yes.
Yes, they are. Like again, I say this every time we talk about it, but if you're a fan of Tangled and you're upset because Tangled never got a sequel, don't be upset anymore because you have 3 entire seasons of a fantastic show that explore all of these characters even more deeply and getting extra bonus awesome fantastic characters like Cassandra and Varian. And the voice actors are back and the music is still phenomenal and movie quality, and not to mention just the boarding and the animation, and everyone who worked on it put their heart and soul into it. And I can't wait to talk with you about it because I have so many feelings. Yes.
It'll happen.
Yes, it'll happen. Can't guarantee when, but I am working on it because I'm rewatching it now. I'm also, speaking of, I've been watching a lot, actually, like, regardless of me being super busy during this time, part of my job requires me to stuff envelopes. So I just watch TV while I stuff thousands of envelopes every week, which means I have lots of time for watching TV. And I'll just tell you, like, the fun, good things that I would recommend watching if anyone else needs a distraction from the realities of life right now. Other than Tangled the series, definitely watch the Fruits Basket reboot, which season 2 is currently airing. It just makes me so happy. Like, I cannot, like, with how happy that show makes me. It's we talked about it before, but if you don't know, it's the sweetest, kindest, most precious baby angel. Toru is the best character in the whole world, and she basically just goes around making everyone else's lives better by just being herself. Like, talk about a purpose and living your purpose. She just, through her kindness and empathy and patience and understanding, steps into this world, the world of this family, and changes all of their lives for the better. And it's fantastic, super uplifting, and it just makes me cry, and the characters are so sweet. I can't.
Yeah. Seriously, if you want a show that's going to make you feel like, you know, even though things are crazy and life sucks sometimes, like, it's going to be okay. And there are good people like Toru who are just, oh my gosh, it just makes you smile, and, like, you're just so happy every time you watch that show. Highly recommend.
Highly recommend. If you want to hear Emma and I talk about it, we don't talk about the reboot, but we talk about the original, like 2001 anime in our Fruits Basket episode that we've done in the past. And we'll definitely talk about the reboot, you know, probably when it's done airing, but because we love it. The other one I want to mention that is also an anime and a rom-com and fantastic is Kaguya-sama Love is War. Have you heard about
I've heard of that one? Yes. I haven't watched it.
It's also season 2 is currently airing right now, and it is absolutely brilliant. Like, it's these it's just such a fun concept. It's these two high school kids. Classic high school anime. They are the president and vice president of the school they attend, and they both have it in their head that to confess your love to someone is a sign of weakness. So,
oh my gosh, what?
So what they do is, because they both mutually have crushes on each other, and it's so cute, but they're both super, super smart and, like, just hilarious. So they just think of ways to make the other person confess, because they're never going to.
Oh my gosh.
So every episode is like tiny little snippets of story of, like, it could be like the simplest thing. Like, oh, we should decide where the student council is going on a trip. And then they have this whole like thing about, like, well, you know, she's like, well, we can't go. Well, I got to go to the beach so that I can wear my swimsuit and, like, you know, and and like be all cute, right? And then he's like, I've got to go to the mountains because I can't swim. You know what I mean? Like, but it's all happening internally, and so they're like just coming up with these schemes, and it's so quick and witty, and I can't wait till the English dub comes out, because, like, they talk so fast, and there are so many visual, like, you know, onomatopoeia things that, like, there's so much happening. I cannot read the subtitles fast enough sometimes. It's very clever and very sweet and wholesome, and I highly recommend it.
It sounds like something I would love.
It's right up your alley, Emma. I can't believe I've watched it and you haven't. It's very popular right now. Like, people are all about it because it's clever. It's hilarious. It's so fun. And it obviously has a lot of heart in it too.
Also, if you need another show to watch during this quarantine time that is comedic and romantic, on Netflix, they have the full season of Maid Sama, or Our President is a Maid. I absolutely love that rom-com so much. It's very much a love-hate relationship until they finally confess their feelings for each other, and it's just such a ride. I love it.
Good. I know you've been hounding me on that one for a long time, and I definitely need to watch that one too. You know, so many things to watch, and I'm still behind on Fairy Tale. So what can I do?
Yeah, there's always going to be something, right?
You're right. That's true. That's true. So I hope we've given everyone lots of good uplifting things that they should watch, and let us know your thoughts on all of these shows and movies at Fanimated Podcast on all your social medias, and fanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. I feel like I'm on Instagram the most, but we're places. So yeah, I hope everyone is doing okay right now, and yeah, we'll just keep making podcasts, because I know I'm in that boat of I just need to listen to my fun, happy podcasts whenever I can, as a great distraction. So we'll try to be here for you, and we love you all. I'm being very sentimental this episode.
It's super cute, Kelly.
Well, thank you, Emma, for joining me.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It's always a joy.
Always a joy, and I'm glad we have gotten past our technical difficulties so that we can hopefully do long distance stuff more as we go into this era of the world.
Agreed.
All right, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you guys so much for listening. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Fanimated Podcast. We receive emails at fanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. You can support the podcast and get behind the scenes content at patreon.com/fanimated. And the art for this podcast is done by myself. You can find me on Instagram at CandorDraw. The music is provided by Purple Planet Music, and a huge thank you to Emma for joining me virtually today. We will talk to you sometime soon, but in the meantime, stay tuned and stay animated. Honestly, life is really hard right now and uncertain, and I think everyone's in the same boat, and so I just want to thank you all for listening, because I really enjoy working on this podcast, because despite everything, it feels like one little constant thing in my life that I can kind of rely on. And so I hope you listeners, you Fanimators out there, feel the same way. You're all awesome.
Oh, of course. And I, as a listener as well, absolutely love tuning in. And it's just a little snippet of joy to add to our chaotic lives. So thank you, Kelly, for doing all this hard work.
Aw, thank you, Emma. Thank you for being here and being willing
welcome.
to talk about animation with me all the time.
Always.
We're kindred spirits in that regard.
Yes. I think that's how we bonded.
It is.
That's another story.
Another story in the memoirs of our friendship.